Welcome back to Success Beyond Borders. It seems like just yesterday we were diving deep into another fascinating topic. You know how we roll here, though, exploring the stuff that really keeps things moving in the world of media and tech.
I am definitely excited to be back. What's on the docket for our deep dive today?
Well, today we're taking inspiration from something that might seem a bit out of left field at first. We're going to be talking about Formula One.
F1. Color me intrigued. I have to admit, I'm not quite seeing the connection to media and tech just yet.
Trust me on this one, it's going to get really interesting, I promise. What we're really talking about is the incredible precision and teamwork of an F1 pit crew,
Okay.
and how those same principles can actually be applied to something as complex as, well, market expansion.
Okay, now I see where you're going with this. I mean, the stakes are definitely high in both situations, no question about it.
Exactly. When you think about a pit stop, it's all about pressure. It's a high-pressure situation where every single second counts. You've got this team of specialists all working together in perfect synchronization. They have to execute this complex series of tasks with absolutely zero margin for error.
Yeah, if any of them are off by even a fraction of a second, the whole thing can fall apart.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's why we're bringing it back to the worlds of market expansion. I mean, think about it. You're up against intense competition, your resources are often limited, and there's constant pressure to make the right decisions quickly. Any little misstep could end up costing you big time.
Absolutely. The parallels are definitely there.
So, to really paint a picture here, let's rewind for a second and go back to the 2023 Qatar Grand Prix.
Okay.
McLaren's pit crew managed to pull off a record-breaking 1.80-second pit stop.
Oh, I remember seeing that. It was absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, they were like a perfectly choreographed machine. It was incredible.
It was amazing, wasn't it? And what's so fascinating about it, to me at least, is that it's not just about speed, It's really about that level of teamwork, communication, and strategic execution that went into making something like that even possible.
Absolutely. You could just tell that they were anticipating each other's moves before they even happened. It was incredible.
They're in the zone.
Yeah, and the way they were able to communicate silently, just using hand signals and body language, it was incredible.
It was like they had their own language.
Yeah, and each member of that crew knew their role perfectly and just trusted the others implicitly. It was really something.
And that kind of seamless coordination is what separates the winners from everyone else.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're on the racetrack or the business world, that principle holds true.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we take that pit crew magic and translate it into something as complex as expanding into a new market?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
It all starts with recognizing that market expansion is a team sport, just like an F1 race, really. You need that same level of expertise, communication, and trust across every single department. Sales, marketing, product development, operations, you name it, everyone's got to be on the same page.
No more silos. It's all about breaking down those barriers and creating a truly cohesive unit where everyone can contribute and really get things done.
Exactly. And just like a well-oiled pit crew, everyone needs to be on board with the goals. They have to understand their role in the larger strategy. And most importantly, they have to feel empowered to contribute their own unique skills and insights.
And this is a key takeaway. Just like an F1 team analyzes every single detail of their performance, companies need to be constantly evaluating their market expansion strategy. You've got to be looking for ways to optimize and improve all the time.
I agree. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. The market's always changing. You got to be ready to adapt.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get really interesting. I've heard that there's actually a framework designed specifically for that purpose. It's called GrowthBridge. It was developed by a company called nGülam.
GrowthBridge. Interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, nGülam specializes in helping businesses navigate the often very choppy waters of market expansion. Especially small to mid-sized B2B technology and media companies, they've taken those same core principles of F1 pit crew precision and turned them into a roadmap for success.
So how does this growth bridge actually work? What are the key components of this methodology?
Well, it all begins with a laser focus on understanding your target market. You can't just assume that what worked in your home market will automatically translate to a new region.
You're absolutely right. I mean, every market has its own quirks.
Exactly.
What works in one place might completely flop in another. You got to do your homework.
GrowthBridge really emphasizes that. It emphasizes how important it is to define your ideal customer profiles, especially for those new markets. It's all about figuring out who you're targeting, what their pain points are, and how your product or service can address their unique challenges.
It's about moving beyond that old spray and pray approach. It's about adopting a much more targeted and strategic mindset.
Precisely. Once you have a deep understanding of who your target customer is, you can start crafting a compelling value proposition that truly resonates with them. It's about answering the question, why should they choose you over the competition? What makes you stand out? What unique value do you bring to the table?
And of course, that value proposition needs to be tailored to the specific market you're going after, right? You can't just copy and paste what worked in your home market and expect it to have the same impact everywhere else.
Absolutely not. You have to speak their language, address their specific concerns, and make sure that your offering is positioned in a way that makes sense within their cultural context.
I can imagine there's a lot of research and analysis involved in that initial phase.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But remember, we're talking about achieving that F1 level of precision. It's a
Mhm.
process. You can't rush it or cut corners if you want to truly succeed. You got to be willing to put in the work.
No shortcuts to success, right? So what happens once you've figured out your target customer and you've nailed down your value proposition? Where do you go from there?
Well, the next step is developing a tailored go-to-market plan. This is where you map out your entire strategy for entering that new market.
So what exactly are the key elements of a go-to-market plan? I mean, what does that actually look like?
Well, it covers a lot of ground. You're looking at things like the competitive landscape, the regulatory hurdles you might face, figuring out the best channels to reach your target customers, setting realistic sales targets, really everything.
It sounds pretty comprehensive. Like you're thinking about every possible angle.
It is. That's because GrowthBridge takes a holistic approach to market expansion. It recognizes that every aspect of your business, from product development all the way to customer service, needs to be aligned with that overall strategy.
Okay, so far this sounds great in theory, but do you have any real-world examples of companies that have actually used this growth bridge method successfully? Because I'd love to hear how it's worked in practice.
We do, and it's a pretty compelling story.
Okay, now you're really talking my language. I love a good case study. Hit me with it.
So there was this media tech provider who was having some real trouble trying to break into new European markets.
Okay, so this media tech company, what exactly were they struggling with? Was it like a cultural mismatch, regulatory hurdles, or something else entirely?
Well, it was a bit of a cocktail of challenges, really. I mean, they had a fantastic product, don't get me wrong. They was doing very well in their home market. But when it came to Europe, they just couldn't seem to get any traction.
Yeah, that's a common problem. Sometimes what's a hit in one market falls flat in another. It's tough to predict.
It really is. And in their case, there were a few key things that were tripping them up.
I'm listening.
First off, they just didn't have a good grasp of the local market dynamics in Europe. Each European country has its own unique culture, its own way of doing business, and of course its own competitive landscape. What flies in one country might crash and burn in another.
It's kind of like trying to use the same driving techniques on a Formula One track and then, like, on a winding mountain road. It's just not going to work.
That's a perfect analogy. And then on top of that, they were up against some pretty fierce competition from established players who already had a strong foothold in those markets.
Hmm.
It's tough to break in when you're the new kid on the block, especially when you're going up against the big dogs.
Absolutely. And resources, I imagine, were probably a constraint too. I mean, expanding into new markets takes serious time, money, and manpower. It's not for the faint of heart.
You nailed it. They were a relatively small company, and they just didn't have the massive budget or the manpower that their bigger competitors had. It was a David and Goliath situation.
Okay, so they were facing an uphill battle on multiple fronts. That's a lot to handle. What made them decide to give this growth bridge a try? I mean, what was the turning point for them?
Well, they'd heard some buzz about nGülam's success, helping other companies expand globally. And I think they were drawn to the structured, data-driven approach of the growth bridge methodology. They needed a lifeline, and that's what nGülam offered.
It makes sense. I mean, when you're feeling overwhelmed and you're not really sure which way to turn, having a proven framework like that can be really valuable. It can provide that much needed clarity and direction.
Exactly. So they reached out to nGülam, and that's when things started to shift.
Okay, so tell me how this growth bridge was actually applied in this particular case. What were the first steps they took? I'm curious to hear how it all went down.
Well, the first thing nGülam did was really get to know the client's business inside and out.
Hmm.
They spent time getting familiar with the company's products, understanding their target customers, and really digging deep into their overall business goals.
It's like those pre-race briefings, right?
Yeah.
Where the F1 team analyzes the track conditions, looks at the weather forecast, checks out the competition. You got to know what you're up against before you can develop a winning strategy.
Exactly. You need that deep understanding of the playing field before you can make any smart moves.
So once they had that baseline understanding, what did they do next? How did they start putting that knowledge into action?
Well, the next step was to conduct some pretty thorough market research to figure out which European markets were the most promising for this client's products. They weren't going to waste time and resources trying to enter a market where there wasn't any demand, right?
Right. Makes perfect sense. Got to focus your energy where it counts.
Exactly. So nGülam's team analyzed things like market size, growth potential, the competitive landscape, and the regulatory environment. They were looking for the sweet spots. And in the end, they identified the top 3 markets that offer the best chance of success.
So they narrowed it down to a more manageable number of target markets. That's smart. Focus your efforts. So what did they do with those 3 markets?
They developed tailored plans for each one. This is where GrowthBridge really stands out. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of approach.
So they recognized that each of those markets was unique and required a specific strategy.
Absolutely. They factored in all those cultural nuances, the business practices, the competitive landscape of each market. It was all about customizing the approach to fit the environment.
I'm curious, can you give me a specific example of how they tailored the approach for a particular country?
Sure, let's take Germany as an example. nGülam's research showed that German businesses are really big on data security and privacy.
Yeah.
It's a major concern for them.
That's no surprise. I mean, Germany has some of the strictest data protection laws in the world. It's something they take very seriously.
Exactly. So nGülam knew that if they wanted to succeed in Germany, they had to highlight the robust security features of their client's product. That had to be front and center in their marketing materials and their sales pitches. They had to speak to that specific concern.
Makes perfect sense. They adapted their messaging to address a key concern for their target customer in that specific market.
Exactly. And they did the same thing for each of the other target markets, tailoring their approach to make sure it resonated with the specific needs and priorities of each region. It was all about customizing the message to fit the audience.
It's like those adjustments an F1 team makes to their car's setup, you know?
Yeah.
They tweak things depending on whether they're racing on a high-speed track or a tight, twisty circuit. It's all about optimizing performance based on the unique conditions.
Absolutely. They're always making little adjustments to get that extra edge.
So they had these tailored plans, right? What were the next steps in actually putting this growth bridge into action?
Well, one of the key things about GrowthBridge is that it's not just about giving advice or creating a fancy strategy document. nGülam takes a much more hands-on approach. They actually embed their own experts with the client's team.
Oh, wow. So it's a lot more collaborative than traditional consulting.
It is. nGülam's experts actually worked side by side with the client's team, providing guidance, support, and those valuable on-the-ground insights.
It's like having that experienced pit crew chief right there with your team, sharing their knowledge and making sure that everyone's performing at their best. It's that mentorship factor that can make such a difference.
That's a great way to put it. And they didn't just stop there. nGülam went even further and leveraged their extensive network to make some key introductions for the client.
Oh, the power of connections. I mean, in the business world, who you know can be just as important as what you know.
Absolutely. nGülam connected the client with potential partners, distributors, even customers in each of those target markets. They opened doors that the client could never have opened on their own.
So they acted as a strategic advisor, and they were also kind of like a matchmaker, connecting the client with the right people who could help them drive growth.
Exactly. And the results speak for themselves. It was a pretty impressive transformation.
Okay, spill the beans. What kind of impact did GrowthBridge have on this company's business? I mean, did they actually see results?
Oh, they did. The impact was huge. First and foremost, they were able to enter those new European markets 40% faster than they had originally planned.
Wow, that's a significant advantage. Time is money, especially in the fast-paced world of media and tech.
You're telling me time to market is crucial. And GrowthBridge helped them accelerate their expansion significantly.
So they got a head start on the competition. What other benefits did they see? I mean, did it translate into actual business growth?
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
Because of those key introductions from nGülam, they were able to form these really strategic partnerships that gave them a major competitive edge. These partnerships allowed them to expand their reach, tap into new distribution channels, and really benefit from that local expertise.
It's like those alliances that F1 teams form, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They partner with engine suppliers or technology companies to gain a technological advantage. Collaboration is key in any field.
Exactly. It's all about working smarter, not harder. And they weren't just expanding their market share, they were also generating entirely new revenue streams through these partnerships.
It sounds like a win-win situation for everyone involved. So they were entering markets faster, they were building valuable partnerships. But what about the bottom line? I mean, did all of this translate into financial success? Did they actually see a return on their investment in GrowthBridge?
They did. In fact, their revenue increased by 30% within the first year of implementing GrowthBridge. It definitely paid off.
That's impressive. It sounds like GrowthBridge really delivered on its promise of accelerated growth. It's not just hype.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And the client was over the moon with the results. They went from struggling to gain any traction in Europe to becoming a major player in several key markets. It was a complete turnaround.
So what do you think were the key factors that contributed to their success? Was it the tailored plans, the embedded experts, those network connections, or a little bit of everything?
I think it was a perfect storm of all of those factors coming together. But if I had to pick one thing that really stood out, it would be the synergy between the client's internal team and those nGülam experts. They really clicked.
There it is again, that pit crew mentality we talked about earlier. It all comes down to teamwork.
Exactly. They worked so well together.
Yeah.
They were sharing knowledge, brainstorming ideas, and supporting each other every step of the way. It was a true partnership.
It's like when the pit crew pulls off a flawless tire change, right? Every single member moves in sync, they anticipate each other's actions, and the result is just pure efficiency. It's amazing to watch.
It really is. And that level of teamwork and collaboration wouldn't have happened without the trust and rapport that was built between those two teams. It was a real human connection.
Trust is the foundation of any high-stakes endeavor. I mean, whether you're talking about an F1 race or a major market expansion project, without trust, it's all going to fall apart.
Couldn't agree more. And that trust was nurtured by nGülam's commitment to transparency, communication, and that shared vision of success. It wasn't just about doing a job, it was about building a relationship.
It sounds like they were really invested in the client's success, not just going through the motions, but truly becoming a partner in their journey.
Exactly. And that's what makes nGülam stand out. They're not just consultants who come in, give advice, and then disappear. They're truly invested in helping their clients achieve sustainable, long-term growth. They're in it for the long haul.
It's not about those quick wins, it's about building something that lasts. So it sounds like GrowthBridge is all about providing that structured, data-driven framework for market expansion, a roadmap that helps companies reach their full potential.
That's exactly it. And I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, okay, that's a great story, but how does this apply to me? I'm not a media tech company trying to break into Europe.
That's a great question. I mean, this all sounds incredibly promising, but I bet some people are wondering, okay, this is great for that one company, but how can I take these principles and actually apply them to my own business?
The valid question, for sure. But there are some key takeaways here that any leader can put into practice, no matter what industry they're in or how big their company is. These principles are universal.
So what advice would you give to someone who's listening, who's thinking, all right, I want to bring that F1 level of precision and teamwork to my own company's growth strategy? What are the first steps? Where do they even begin?
It all starts with a mindset shift.
Yeah.
You got to stop thinking of market expansion as this solo mission and start seeing it as a team sport.
I like that. It really is like an F1 pit crew. Everyone's got to be moving in sync. They need to understand the goals and really, truly trust each other's abilities.
Exactly. So step one, take a good look at your team dynamics. How well do your departments communicate? Do they collaborate effectively? Are they all on the same page when it comes to those market expansion goals?
And don't be afraid to bring in some outside help if you need it. Just like an F1 team has that pit crew chief who's calling the shots and coordinating everything, think about bringing in a consultant or a fractional leader who really knows market expansion inside and out. Someone to guide your team and make sure everyone's rowing in the same direction.
It's true. Sometimes that outside perspective can give you the clarity you need to see those blind spots and really make your approach as strong as it can be.
Absolutely. And once you've got that solid team foundation in place, you can move on to the next step. Get really, really clear on who your target market is. Who are you trying to reach? What keeps them up at night? What are their pain points? And how can your product or service offer a solution that they can't find anywhere else?
And remember, what wows them in one market might not even make a ripple in another. Just like that F1 team that's constantly adjusting their car's setup based on the track they're racing on, you've got to tailor your approach to match the culture, the way they do business, and the level of competition in each new market. It's all about adaptation.
That's where in-depth market research comes in. You can't just rely on surface-level assumptions. You got to dig deep, understand what motivates people, how they behave, what they expect, and how all of that differs from one region to the next.
And don't forget about your competition. Who are the big players in each market? What are they good at? Where are their weaknesses? How can you make your offering stand out in that crowd?
It's a lot like watching those lap times and race strategies in an F1 race, right? You've got to understand how your competitors are playing the game so you can come up with a strategy that puts you in the winner's circle.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Once you've got a handle on your target market and the competitive landscape, you can start mapping out your go-to-market plan.
That's when it's time to bring that F1 level of precision to the table. Just like that perfectly executed pit stop, every single element of your go-to-market plan has to be carefully planned and executed. There's no room for error.
You're absolutely right. You got to make sure you're using the right channels to reach your target customers. You need a message that grabs their attention and speaks directly to their needs. And you got to set realistic sales targets that you can actually hit.
Don't overlook the operational side of things either. You need those internal processes running smoothly. If you want to keep your promises and really wow your customers, you've got to have that back end working like a well-oiled machine.
It's kind of like making sure your pit crew has all the right tools and equipment and that everyone knows their job so well they can execute that pit stop perfectly every single time.
Exactly. And just like those F1 teams that are always analyzing their performance and looking for ways to improve, you've got to create that culture of continuous improvement when it comes to market expansion. You can't just rest on your laurels.
You've got to track your progress, listen to your customers, get feedback from your team, and tweak things along the way. It's all about constantly refining that approach.
And never be afraid to try something new. Experiment. Just like those F1 teams that are always testing out new technologies and new strategies to gain an edge, you got to be willing to step outside that comfort zone and embrace innovation. That's how you stay ahead of the pack.
Couldn't agree more. Market expansion's a journey, not a destination, right? You have to be flexible, adaptable, and always willing to learn as you go.
It's a dynamic process for sure. And in the end, just like in Formula One, success in market expansion isn't just about speed. It's about precision, it's about teamwork, and it's about that relentless drive to be the best you can be.
So if you want to channel that winning F1 spirit and make your mark on new markets, remember to build a strong, cohesive team. Get to know your target market inside and out. Craft a go-to-market plan that's tailored to their needs, and build a culture where continuous improvement is the name of the game.
And if you find yourself needing a helping hand to navigate those twists and turns of global expansion, don't hesitate to reach out to the folks over at nGülam. Their GrowthBridge methodology has helped countless companies achieve some truly impressive results. They could do the same for you.
That's right. For those of you who are interested in learning more about nGülam and the GrowthBridge methodology, you can find all the details in our show notes.
And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to Success Beyond Borders. We've got more exciting deep dives coming your way, exploring all the latest trends and challenges in the world of media and tech.
Until then, keep pushing those boundaries. We'll catch you next time.